Hey guys, happy Monday. It is around 2:41 p.m. You have the lovely Josie and the lovely Carissa. I almost just called myself Josie. I almost just called myself Carissa because it's been that kind of day so far where I am
Mhm.
running from one meeting to the next. But I am excited to be here. We had our team's business planning today. I posted this morning. And it was actually a little bit shorter than it normally is. And still it was really impactful. So we ended it with this Tony Robbins video. Actually, I'll post it in the group. It's such a great, just like affirmations type video, if you will, but it's something he does at his Unleash the Power Within conferences that I think you all would really enjoy. And I wanted us to finish on like a strong note. So we had to cut out something else that wasn't necessarily as important that we'll go over another time. And then we finished on that. So
No, I was just going to add to that. Because I think what we were talking about is important to address that a lot of people will see, okay, Tony Robbins does these meetings where he makes you do cheers or shouts or whatever, and we
yeah,
look at it from the outside, being like, yeah, that's weird. I'm not doing that. Because from the outside, it does look a little weird. Like, just being honest, it looks a little weird, but when
right.
you do it, it just hits differently, right? It's like we can hear, Josie can tell me, Carissa, you're great. You're amazing. You're a rock star. You're this, and it feels good. But when I tell myself that, not just in my head, but when I'm actually saying it, and that's why affirmations work, they really do, is because it's something about you saying it, hearing it, and the way your brain processes it. It's just different, right? And so get out of your, I'm saying this to say, get out of your head. And next time you do have an exercise like that, just go all in. And who cares if people judge you? Like, really, are they going to be judging you when you're super successful in what you're doing?
Part.
Just saying.
And that's why I said to Chris, like we stood up, right? It was a YouTube video. We stood up with him and like the whole crowd of like 11,000 people that were probably in the room. And we like actually leaned into it. So I will share that maybe tomorrow.
Yes.
But so
And
it has me energized
and
and
I'm gonna
it's been a long day.
I want to add to that because we just came off Rise for my brokerage, and we had our keynote speaker, and I cannot remember. I'm gonna look him up while we talk today so that I can add it in here. But he is a composer and pianist, a famous, world famous pianist. And he got up and he had us sing, right? So he's up in front of us and he has us sing some Coldplay song that everybody knows. I'm not good with names of songs, but he has us sing the song. And we're sitting there like, it sounds like crap. Like literally, none of us are probably as good as him, but we're just like, like it was no rhyme, like no, it just sounded like crap. Literally, like it sounded depressing. So then he said, "Guys, come on, let's try that again." And he made us do it again. Sounded a little better, but not phenomenal. Then he makes us stand up and do it, and it sounded 10 times better. I mean, it still wasn't like
Right, because you're more
Coldplay singing
engaged.
it, but
Yeah.
just the fact that we stood up and
Hmm.
sang it. Now, this was the weird part, and I swear to you, it was the weirdest thing, but it made a difference. He said, "Now, I want you to look at the person next to you in the eyes and sing it." I was like, "I'm not doing it. That's just weird."
Right.
Like,
Right.
but when I tell you the difference in what it sounded like, it was harmonious and it sounded great because you're connecting with somebody, you're
Right.
standing up, you're projecting. It's all of the above, and it
Mhm.
made that much of a difference.
That's awesome.
So,
And also probably because you practice it at that point. That's the third time now that you're singing it. So if it's like, I kind of know this song, but now you've sang it three times, it's a little bit more refreshed and you
yes.
have to focus because someone's actually listening to you directly, not
And
just,
he did say that
yeah,
because
see
that's
it
how he
from, yeah.
started it out was like, people who become, he said you take it from this to this. I'll say good to great, right? He used
Right.
different verbiage,
Yep.
but from good to great, right? And so how do you take good from great? It's practice. And it's not just practice when you want to practice. It's consistent practice, and it's doing it over and over and over again, even when you're bored, and doing it over and over again. And that's anything in any business. And he was talking about him practicing the piano and singing and whatever. But same thing with our business. It's like we can't just treat it like a hobby and be like, you know what, I'm gonna do this for 5 minutes because I like it. And that kind of takes us into what me and Josie wanted to talk about a little bit
Yeah.
today was like just because you're good at something or like something doesn't mean you should be doing it at a high level, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
And so I want to preface this with part one. So this live that we're doing, right? We came live last week and we prefaced it then. Every Monday, our intent is to come live for maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, who knows? And just really it's a real estate unfiltered conversation. So, Chris and I meet already a couple times a week to talk about kind of our Troy business, our Real Estate Operations Institute, right? And we just have these conversations. Sometimes they're high level, sometimes they're whatever. We're shooting the shit. And we're like, these are just real conversations that people don't always get to have on just an average daily, weekly basis. So it's separate from business and sales, and it's just real life. And so that's what these are. And so we invite you to join us in the conversation. You can't join us on the Zoom, but feel free to comment, chime in that way, whatever. Like I do have my eyes on the live on my phone as well in case anyone does comment or ask a question randomly. But so something last week we talked about kind of how we started working together and kind of the evolution of TREOI, if you will. Again, TREOI stands for the Real Estate Operations Institute, and how we build our own table, right? We both felt like we didn't necessarily get invited to other people's tables per se. We weren't invited to have a seat at their table. So we went and built our own table where we could invite whoever we wanted to come and sit at our table, right? Um, but one thing that she said, which kind of triggered for me, was people who had told us not, right, to get into the naysayers. So not to get into real estate. Don't go start your TC company. Don't go start, what we do now, like the real estate operations, because there's already another person who's doing it, or someone else is going to do it better, or blah, 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 right? And the funny part was the trigger for me that it reminded me was when I first started with Val, my operator, my business partner, my sister. Um, Within 6 months or so, I had started also doing independent transaction coordination for certain agents in the office because back then having a team wasn't as common and having even like an assistant wasn't as common, right? We're talking about like 8 years ago. And so I used to do per file transactions, which now is very common, right? To be able to hire someone. And people used to say all the time for a while, like, you should really like start a whole company. You could hire a bunch of TCs under you, but you oversee and da 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 da. And I could have, and it could have potentially been a massive business venture, but I was always like, I just don't want to, right? And I always used to use the comparison, like, listen, just because I'm good at cleaning, it doesn't mean that I want to go start a cleaning company, right? And then that when I would say that, people would be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I get that." Right? And so just because I was good at transactions, like I'm very attention to detail, like I can build checklists, I can build out a whole TC program for plenty of people, but I had no desire to do that. And if I don't have the desire to do it, I'm not going to necessarily excel at it, right? And so that is something that I really want you guys to hold on to, right? Just because you might be able to do something and you might even be good at it, it doesn't mean that you're passionate about it and that just because everybody else might be telling you, oh, you should go do this, that you should actually go do that, right? Like that's the part of the mission statement, the purpose statement that I think people need to remember to tie back in. It's not just what you're actually doing that you're good at, but what are you actually passionate about doing? What would you do even if you weren't being paid to do it? And figure out how you can do that. Merge the two. How do you do something that you're good at and something that you would do even if you weren't being paid to? Because when you can merge that and truly find your joy zone, as I like to say, that is when you really start to find a rhythm and just like a drive unlike anything else, right? It's the thing that will truly carry you through when the mornings you don't want to get up, the mornings that you're just like, I don't want to do this, the weeks where you're just like, I just want a staycation, I don't want to talk to anybody, I don't want to be bothered with anybody. It's really the thing that will remind you that you're doing this for a reason bigger and outside of just yourself.
And I think the thing I don't want you guys to use as a crutch or even Josie or myself, like this is a conversation Josie and I would normally have. Like now, don't get it mistaken with you don't want to do it. Like how Josie said, I'm good at doing TC work. I just don't want to do it. Don't use as an excuse because you're scared. So seriously, think about it and break it down and be like, is this something that I'm just scared to do and don't know what the other side of this looks like? And this is comfortable right here. So I'm going to stay in this pocket. If that's the case, don't let that hold you back. But if it is truly something that you are just going through the motions because you are good at, you like Josie's good at, the attention to detail and she can be good at that. Don't use that, don't say I have to do this just because I'm good at it, right?
Right.
You do want there to be drive because just as Josie said, there's going to be mornings that you're not going to want to get up. So something that is task driven isn't necessarily going to fill your bucket, right? And so me knowing Josie, how I know her now is she can absolutely knock that out of the park. However, if it's something that's long term, short term, sure, I can be like, hey, Josie, I need you to do this file for me. And she's going to be like, yes, of course, I'll do it for you because it's just one and done, right? But in the long term, she's going to fizzle out. She is going to
Right.
literally, and I'm not saying she would drop the ball, but people who are not filling their bucket eventually stop showing up the way you thought they would show up. So things start to get missed sometimes, and things start to not be as crisp as they used to be because their heart is not in it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had this conversation with one of my agents that is part of the brokerage, and we were talking about just because she's good at it doesn't mean she should be doing it. And just because one of her work, like she's got a couple of people on her team, and I'm like, just because your team member can do it for you doesn't mean she should be doing it. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, give her a task that she is super magical at, and she will soar, and it'll be crazy. And you might have to pay someone else to do this part, or you might have to do it temporarily. But when you see the work that comes out of this person because they are genuinely happy to do what they're doing and using the creative side, and it just brings out another piece of them, it's worth it. It's so
Right.
worth it in leveraging that. And Josie and I talk about it all the time. There's very few people that can use both sides of their brain at a high level every day.
Right. And it reminds me of something that we used to talk about, right? And even like on our team and a lot of coaching conversations that our team has had with our coaches is putting people on the right seat on the right bus,
Right.
right? And so to what she was just saying, like if you have a VA, for example, who maybe is maybe they're really great at transactions. I'll just use that as an example. But maybe personally, they have this great interest in graphic design. And that literally was someone on our team who used to be one of our VAs. She was hired to do transactions. And then when I found out she had a graphic design background, this was literally how I posed the question. And even to this day, when I interview like virtual assistants or operations type staff, I'll ask this question: if all positions were available on the team right now, because as we grow, we want to add new positions in. So if all positions were available and you could have your pick of the litter, pay everything the same, whatever, right? Like one's not going to pay more than the other, both will be full time, let's say, whatever. Like, is there something that you would rather be doing or something that you would want to maybe transition into doing down the road? And I've been able to find out information that way that I wouldn't have known otherwise if I didn't ask the question. So for like the TC, because she had a graphic design background and she used to do a lot of marketing, she was intimidated because I also do marketing. And she's like, you do it at such a high level. I'm like, girl, if you want to help take over some of the marketing, like I can even just give you projects. So like you're not going to take over the social media account necessarily, but I had her create our team's moving guide, for example. She's the one that created the email templates graphics that we use now for our transactions. It was an idea Carissa gave me, and we have a similar version in the TC course that we sell right on our store site. But she created all of these really beautiful graphics. So ideas that I had in my head that I didn't have the time or the capacity to actually execute, I just leveraged to her. I was like, hey, can see what, like, give this a shot and see what you come up with. And then I was able to tweak it and customize it. Another one, for example, our client care manager, she was like, I would love to learn more. She's like, not that I want to take over like the TC or signing, because client care, she mainly does calls and client touches, but she actually did want to just learn to be able to just help more. So like learn a little bit more about DocuSign and a little bit more about like sending out like the buyer agency agreements, for example. Maybe eventually like just being able to help plug in to send like an offer or something. So just that if we needed her to, she could plug in. And now, before she used to be like, do you need me to send this out? Now, if somebody mentions like this person's ready to move forward, she'll just go and do it. And she'll be like, hey, I got this. And then like, as long as she's not busy, she'll go and send out the buyer rep, for example, through DocuSign, because that's something our ops team does. So just understanding that even just by asking the question and making sure that we are maximizing the skills that they have, and giving them the opportunity to shine in different ways. Like the more that you can change it up and add variety while still sticking within what you need them to do, right? But if that TC, for example, ended up being way better at social media and marketing, I would have moved her. If that meant me taking back the TC and she would take over the marketing that I was doing because she was able to do it at a higher level, then I'm going to move her into that seat. And so just being able to be aware, do you have all the people in the right seat doing the right type of activities that you need them to do to excel? Like I hear it all the time about agents who then realize that they're better at ops, right? Or the vice versa. People who were in ops because they thought that they were more admin minded, who really actually were more people personalities and turned out to be way better at sales. And so then they transitioned to becoming agents. So both sides can be true.
No, absolutely. And I do believe that a lot of it comes from we're in a society of people pleasing. That's it. So we know that if something makes, like, if I was working for Josie and I knew, okay, she reacted a certain way because I did a great job at the TC work, I want to keep making her happy and I don't want to disappoint her. However, what you don't realize is in not fully showing up as your full potential, full self, full whatever you can bring to the table is actually doing a disservice to anybody you're working with. So if you're just doing something to go through the motions, it does nobody any good in the long run. So be sure that if you are on the reverse as the leader, it is not just the person's job to open their mouth while they're adults and they should be saying XYZ. Remember that most of the time you're the one signing the paycheck, so they're going to do any job that you ask them to do, right? And that's a good team member, but they shouldn't be doing that long term, right? If temporarily you got to put people in places like Josie's doing some TC work right now. She does not love it, but she knows that's part of her job is to fill the gaps while it's
Right.
needed. However, as a leader, it is your job to pull out of people what their magic is. So don't just put them in that seat and hit autopilot. Like Josie said, she's asking questions, she's digging deeper, she's letting them know that, I want to know what you love doing and what you don't like doing. And when I ran that mastermind with a couple of my agents, that's what we did. We went around the table and I said, "This is a judgment-free zone. This is not. You can't throw anything in anybody's face at this point."
Right.
But we ask each person, like, what do you love about the position you're in? Even if it's not something you do every day, but like if there's something that you are just like, I cannot wait to get my hands on that. What do you love? And what is one thing that you would just let go today and never think about again. And so we went through that exercise and they made adjustments on their team. And I swear, the agent that I helped, she tells me all the time that she's like, you helped my business so much just by those couple of words. Like it wasn't even anything. I didn't give her this box of treasures, but apparently opening up the box was the box of
Right.
treasures.
It's the permission kind of.
Yes.
Yeah, you give them the opportunity and you give them the permission to be honest and to just have that conversation. Yeah.
Yes, because you do not realize what level you can take your business to just by letting people do what they were put on this earth to do. And sometimes we don't see it because again, they are people pleasing. They're just filling a gap, but that filling of the gap gets to be long term. And then there's nothing wrong with changing it up because the other thing is I'm just as bad. I've done it like this forever, or I've done it for this
Right.
long. I'm gonna be 42 years old. I don't want to go back to school to do this. I don't want to. Why not? Like, why not? If
Hmm.
it is something that fulfills you, don't think just because you have done it this way for so long that you can't switch it up. There's no rule that says you can't.
Agreed. And I see. So thanks to those who are watching along. We're gonna wrap it with that because I feel like that was a lot for you guys to digest, think on. This is the stuff we constantly think on and talk about, right? And those for those who don't have these conversations regularly, I think that that's a really good place to just pause, stop, for today, and just really let you kind of embrace all of that, right? Not doing things that other people think you should be doing, right? Making sure that you actually find joy in the things that you're pushing yourself to do, and then making sure, like, if you do run a team, or even just for yourself, are you in the right seat in your business, right? Um, if this is something I've said to Val, and she's not watching these, but like I feel like we would benefit to have a director of sales, right? Because she is amazing with the coaching and the mentorship, and yet having someone who's just like purely like a sales beast, I think would actually help our team, right? And so just being aware of that, right? So if you're the rainmaker and that's you, like, are you in the right seat as well, or do you need to leverage different pieces of the business to just grow that much better? So a lot to think about. And hopefully that can help you just really get your juices flowing, especially as we're in business planning season and as you're really thinking about how you want to set your business up for 2026.
Yep. Well, thank y'all for joining us this week. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.